Hello, Widowhood. I want to tell you thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for investing your time in watching these podcasts and hearing the stories of my grief, of the death of my late husband, from the vantage point of myself, my family, and my friends. The conversation today with Monica is wrapping up the sharing of my story because I wanted you to understand you are not in this alone. This is a road, unfortunately, that I have traveled longer than some and shorter than others. But as we continue on this topic of grief and losing a loved one, I want you to know that I care. And I want to hear your stories. I want you to share questions that you would like for us to cover on the podcast. I would like for you to email me if you're interested in sharing your story. You can go to the website because Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission of supporting people that are grieving and providing a candid place for a conversation about grief. And that's what this is all about. You can email me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. You can go to our website, widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org, to be able to share your stories and recommend different questions. Let's get into this conversation with my friend Monica.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Today's conversation is with my girlfriend, Monica. Hey, Monica.
Hey, Tina.
It is Monday night. It's like 9 p.m. She got me out here. I'm sorry, 9:14, way past my bedtime. But Monica is committed to the hood, so she got me being committed too. So I'm appreciative for her time. So Monica, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I've known Tina for quite some time. So we go way back when our kids were little. We met in church, mainly because our kids were together and in school together as well. But besides that, we connected pretty easily because we share a lot of similar interests. But me, I have two kids, and I've worked most of my life, either for a company. Currently, I work partially for a spa and partially building my own clients. So when I retire one day, I'll just have a little lovely job or hobby and provide some monetary resources as well. I'm from Poland, in case you're wondering where's this accent coming from. But I've been in US for since 87, so this is my home now. I love God. I love sports. I'm very competitive when it comes to football. Steelers are my team. I love outdoors. Yeah, I know they didn't do well. College football, college basketball, I'm all into it. I love outdoors. I love working out. Try to be healthy, and I like having fun.
Okay. So let's go back to Poland. What age did you come to the US and what was your life like in Poland?
I came here when I was 16, and I came from a tiny little place, literally less than 1,000 people in my village. So I came from a little place to New York City. So that was a shock. But life in Poland was very different to what I experienced here. Most of the people were farming, but not business, just to mainly, grow food for themselves. And either one or both. Mom, parents were working as well to provide income. So as kids, we worked since we were very little, either tending to the livestock, going out and working the fields, school, and very little playtime. Everybody knew everybody. If you got in trouble with anyone, they would correct you right there, and so you just didn't get in trouble much. But it was very very loving and very open at the same time. So in some ways, also had a, I don't know, tough time growing up because my mom was in US, since when I was 10 she left, and then I didn't see her since I was 16. We also didn't have phones available, or camera phones for sure. So I would talk to her maybe twice a year for a couple of minutes, the very bad reception. And in between, we would write letters. Also, my youngest sister, who was 3 at the time when my mom left in 82, no, in 81. So I haven't seen her, till she was 10. So she left a baby, and then, she was a little brat when we got here to US, but she was super excited to see us. So
Tending animals, you said 2 words. You shared some of that with me. I want you to expand on that a little bit more about what tending animals really look like.
whew, all right. Well, they have to be taken care of every day. So usually I would get up around summertime, probably 3:30, 4 o'clock, and go out there, feed them, clean up all their mess, get them water. Summertime, we would take them out to pasture, and we didn't have enclosures. And the way our lots were set up, you'd have a little quarter acre here, another 3 miles away, another little piece of land. So we would take them from one little place. Once they finished grazing there, we would, next week we would go to another place. And you would have to stay with them, the entire time while they were grazing. So that was summertime. And while we were in school, they would either, if we didn't have an adult to go, they would stay home in the stable. And then when we'd come home from school, we'd go and, take them out to pasture. We'd have to feed chickens, geese. We also had sheep, we had pigs, and pigs you constantly just, have to feed, clean up their mess, and back to, same thing every day. So in the morning, you'd get up, take care of the animals, then either go to school, or if it was summertime, work the field, go tend the animals. And then in the evening, same thing, clean up the stables, give them feed. We had a horse that also helped with work, and horses wouldn't go out to the fields. They would just stay in the stable. So I would feed them, water them, clean them, wash them, milk the cows, because we had, milking cows, go collect the eggs from the chickens. If you wanted to cook something, we had a kind of stove that you had to bring in wood, chop wood, start the fire, or otherwise you weren't going to have hot water or anything to cook on. So wash your feet and go do it again.
When was time to study in school? How did that work in the schedule?
We didn't have that much time. And honestly, for me, God has blessed me so much that I was able to just retain the information in class, that all I had to do is do my homework. So usually it was at the end of the evening, whenever all the chores were done. And with the animals, we'd be done by 6:30, 7 o'clock. So then you had an hour or so to do your homework and study. Like I said, I thankfully didn't have to study much. I would just get my homework done, and that's it, and I was good.
You said that your mom left when you were 10 years old. What prompted her, or what was the catalyst for her doing that?
So the family has my great grandfather was the first one who immigrated to US. That was just before World War II. And it was to try to get, better life for himself and for his family, and of course trying to escape the war. And slowly, as he, got his permanent residency, became US citizen, then he worked on bringing his children over, and eventually my grandparents became citizens, and then they tried to get the rest of their family. So my mom was finally granted a visa, tourist visa at first, but she can only bring one. She couldn't bring anybody who was over 3. So because my youngest sister was so young, at that point, she didn't even need her own passport. She was in the picture with my mother just on one passport. So yeah, she was able to come over here. And, once my mom got established and everything else, then she worked on getting us over here through all the policies that exist here for families reunification. So it was to try to, make better life for our family.
So you come
Yeah.
at 16, and I
Mhm.
mean, you're coming into womanhood at that age also. That's a challenging time for a young girl too. What are your thoughts like from there to here? That must have been a shocker.
Well, it was a shocker, not even about the womanhood, just coming from a tiny little place. We didn't even have cars. Most of us didn't have running water. We have outhouse, didn't have toilets in the house or anything like that, to cars and busyness nonstop and just massive people not speaking a word of English. And, mom told us, nope, you're going to have to go to school and learn, which of course we wanted to. But we got here July, I want to say it was like July 17th or something like that. And, she worked on getting us registered for school. And by the end of August or early September, I was starting high school.
So you said you didn't know English. How did that work?
You get just thrown in the middle and you have to figure it out. But thankfully, the high school we were in had ESL class. So that was one of the classes, but they would submerge us in all regular classes. So math, English, ESL, whatever other extra class you would pick. And at first, you just kind of try to figure out what's going on. And honestly, it happened so quick that within 3 months, I was speaking and understanding English. I did have my little sister at home, obviously my mom, which was mom, we spoke Polish with my little sister. She did speak Polish, but her English was, obviously a lot better at this point. So she would help us, here and there. But it just surprisingly, I was able to understand a lot. Speaking, I'm sure it was, pronunciation of the words was difficult, but there was so many foreign students at that high school that we all sounded weird, so it wasn't too uncomfortable.
Okay. Now you talk about sister. How many sisters do you have? And where are you
I
in the
have,
placement?
I'm the oldest. I have one who's just 1 year shy of younger than me, and then my little sister is 7 years younger than me.
Do they have children or how do,
Yes, so I have two. My next sister down has three, two girls and a boy, and my youngest sister also has two, a girl and a boy.
how is your
And
family unit maintained? Like, are you guys still just as close now as when you were in Poland, or what does that look like to you as far as family?
yeah, our family is very close. We even though I moved to Pennsylvania when my kids were like 5 and 3, and my sisters lived in New Jersey, about 2 hours away. We made time and to go see each other on regular basis. So our children grew up very close. So the cousins are like siblings. Probably some of the cousins are closer than their siblings, because we always made family our priority. We never missed each other's birthday or holidays. We get together, and whether, I drive down or they come up, summers, my kids would spend quite a bit of time in New Jersey with at my mother's house, and all the cousins would, get there and stay there for a couple of weeks, or they would come to Pennsylvania. I'd have them for a couple of weeks. And we've made that sacrifice, but not really a sacrifice. I feel like that has paid so much dividends in the way our children and our family unit is so tight.
That makes sense. So I'm gonna circle back because I went forward, but so you graduate from high school. What happens
Mhm.
next for you?
I decided I wanted to be a pilot. So
I did not know that. Okay.
my not knowing too much about the way schooling worked in US, and even though I was in high school, but I worked at the same time, helping my mom because she was raising 3 girls by herself, and it was hard. So I would go to school and go to work, and not really spending much time learning how things work around here. But someone told me, hey, you can try the military, and you can be a pilot in the military. So it sounded great. So I actually went and talked to the Air Force recruiter, and they wanted me on board. However, I was not able to do a urine test in front of a person. That was the requirement for the Air Force. Before you even join, they had to watch you provide a urine sample for drug tests. And I tried and just couldn't do it. I was too uncomfortable. Couldn't make it. So couldn't make it to the Air Force. They said, well, you can do it in the Navy. And Navy did not require the same pre-test, although the recruiter did not tell me I would have to do that once I got the very first night I got to boot camp.
Oh my gosh. So wow. That's a setup right there.
I was a setup. But I was already there. So I was me and another girl were the last 2 people, like after midnight, still drinking water, walking around in circle until our bladders could not take it. And finally, somehow we made it, because I don't know what was going to happen next. But yeah, so I joined the military. I couldn't start as a pilot because that requires to be an officer and you have to go to school. But I did start as a aviation machinist mate, which is a jet engine mechanic, the very next closest thing to a pilot, I suppose. And I loved it. I really enjoyed my time in the service. Made one of my best friends is still very close to me. She lives in Cleveland, and we made connection in boot camp and stayed in touch since then.
That's the lady you go on vacation with. You guys travel and meet up. I don't recall her name, but I hear you talking of her always and so
Yeah.
fondly that's a lifelong relationship there.
Yes, Tiffany, and our kids call, each other aunt. So like her kids call me auntie, my kids call her auntie, even though there's no blood relation there, but that's irrelevant.
So I remember basic training. That was the first time I went to the bathroom and there were no doors. Like there were just open stalls. Was it like that for the Navy or when you went to basic training?
I think, yeah, no, we did not have doors in the stalls. And I was one of the first companies that was mixed. So
Oh,
we had
okay.
guys and girls, yes. But for the night, we would go to separate barracks. So we would interact, we were together all day long in classes and, training and all that stuff. But of course, for sleeping quarters and bathrooms, we were still separate.
When you said
But
basic training, I remember getting off. Now, where was your basic training? So Navy was at Great Lakes or someplace else? Was
no,
that?
it was actually, or at that point, they had 3: Orlando, Florida, Chicago, or not Chicago,
Great Lakes.
yeah, Great Lakes, or they had one in California. I don't remember which one now, but I was in Orlando.
Okay. And if I recall, the Navy is consolidated right now. It's basically at Great Lakes is where they have all of their
Only
training.
that's it.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
you brought back some memories. I remember, so I left Chicago, and I
Yeah.
don't know if it was a combination of plane or flying, but my boot camp was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and
Oh,
I was
wow.
dirt tired. And I remember getting off of there, not knowing where I was, people yelling at you and all this other different
Yep.
stuff, and just like, here we go, and I volunteer for this. So I
Oh,
don't
God. Girl, I cried my first week.
really.
Why did I do this? My mom did not want me to join the service. I really wanted to go. It was just before Desert Storm, and she's like, "No, you can't go." She was crying. And I said, "Okay, Mom, I won't go." And then once everything settled down, she was okay with it. But I was one of it was a 4th of July weekend when I got there, and I got there before 4th of July. So like a lot of people were coming after that. So there was like 5 of us for maybe 4 days just by ourselves. And I was miserable.
Yes, that holding over till enough people come to fill up your class and they're kind of like staggering in. But it's funny,
Yeah,
like you were there 5 days. It was like you knew everything by the time the other people came because you look like the
true.
old timer. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah. And nobody knows that you have just been there 5 days, but it seems like
Yeah,
you knew everything. At least that was my perspective for people that just been there.
yeah.
Then by the time you graduate, you're like, you're only here like a couple of days. How's that happen? Was that the same with you?
Yes, very much so.
So how do you find yourself in Pennsylvania now? How do you go from joining the Navy to that life now to Pennsylvania?
I guess that's life, right? But ended up getting married and having 2 kids. And then we started in Virginia, actually, in Norfolk. Just wasn't working out as far as jobs and being able to work and have a little kid away from the family. So we ended up moving to New York, and New York just got old because it was just too much city, too crowded. Didn't want to raise the kids in that kind of atmosphere. So from there, we went to New Jersey for just maybe a year and a half, and started. It was just too expensive to try to buy a house in New Jersey. So we started exploring in Pennsylvania. And everybody there was like, wait, now try this, try that. And stumbled all the way up in Tobyhanna. Found a nice, little place. And that's where we've been since 2001.
I didn't know about the New Jersey and the Pennsylvania part. And I will say, if I recall correctly, you lived on the backside of Lisa. Like you guys
That
lived, okay. Did
Yep.
you almost share the backyard or how close was it?
There was like one row of homes in between us, but the neighbor next to us was a couple from Russia too, who had a summer home there, and they weren't in there all the time. Plus, they never objected to the kids or me walking through their yard. So I would just walk through the yard to get to Lisa's house.
I didn't know about the lady in Rochester. I knew about the
Yeah,
connection of the yards and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Cool. That is so cool. So you talk about we went to church together. Do you remember like when we met, or I don't have a formative idea like when we met per se.
Are you asking for a date?
No, just the activity, how it happened, or if you remember like when.
I remember it was through I was serving in the kids ministry, and your kids would come to the kids, classes, and that's how I remember us meeting for the first time.
That sounds about right. That sounds about
Yeah.
right. And so your daughter is the same. I think your daughter is about the same age as my son, and
Mm-hmm.
then my daughter is about the same age as your son as far as
Right.
proximity. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like so that was a lot of passing and getting to know each other. I think the friendship really started to kindle, I'll say, when there were some classes that you guys were taking at night. And then I
Mm-hmm.
was watching the children. I was watching your children, Lisa's children. I feel like that's when we really started to get closer. That's my
Definitely.
recollection of it all.
Yeah. Yes.
and the kids would come over and hang out and stuff like that. And it was like one of those things. I was like, I think I bit off more than I could chew. I got like 6 kids once a week here and stuff like that. But nobody was like itty bitty baby. Everybody could pretty much handle themselves and stuff like that. And I'm glad to say that this group of children, everybody ate what they were given. It wasn't one of these things where it's like, I only eat this or I don't eat that. They were full on willing to eat everything and do it. Yeah. Yes.
Hopefully you would have let them be hungry if they didn't.
See, you know me well that that is exactly what would have happened. They would have become hungry or they've gotten hungry when they went home. Yeah, for
Yep,
sure.
no problem here.
Yep. And that is why we work so well together. I know we're going to talk about my loss with Mark, but what losses have you had in your life, Monica? And it may not always be a person, maybe an experience or life things too.
Both. So I lost my aunt when I was still in Poland, who was filled up a big space like my mom because I lived with her when my mom was here. And she died of cancer, and her children were away in school. So because they're a little bit older than I am, so I spent a lot of time with her and just taking care of her when she got really sick. I also lost my father in 2005, also to cancer. I lost my grandmother, old age, not cancer. I lost another aunt, my father's sister. I mean, as far as loss of family, there's been quite a bit. Because growing up in Poland, we would attend pretty much every funeral because it was such a small place. Everybody knew, like I said, everybody knew everyone and everybody supported, especially people in time of need. I was exposed to, death and saying goodbye to people from very, very early on. And I remember either going with my grandmother, going to a home and praying, and we didn't have funeral homes. So the body would be right there in the home. Um, Usually we would, just light, there would be a lot of candles being burned, and, people wouldn't be there for too long, maybe 2 3 days max, just waiting for family to gather if they were away, and people would be buried. But I saw that very early, and also believed in, once people die, if they're believers, they'll be reunited with God in heaven. So even though it was a loss, I knew I believe there was more to life than what it was here. So it was never like devastating to me in that way. I heard and I cried and I was missing that person, but at the same time, I always had hope that I would see them again.
So when did your faith in God begin or for you?
Just grew up in a Catholic, so I had always believed in God, but the personal relationship, the strongest or my decision that I've made to follow Jesus and have him, choose him as my savior, or allow him to be my savior, welcome him in my life, was in 1996 in Virginia, in Norfolk, Virginia. Damien was my son was already born. He was a few months old, and there was a tiny little church that not even a block away that was meeting in a place there. And when I was in the military, I was exploring, trying different churches, Baptist, Methodist, different kind, because there was always something missing in the relationship that I had, or the knowledge that I had as a Catholic, just growing up in a Catholic church. It didn't feel like I had a personal connection with God. So when I visited the tiny little church, and it was a non-denominational church, just very worshiping and learning, and everybody was so loving and welcoming. I just Holy Spirit grabbed me, and I haven't gotten back since then. So
If I'm somebody that's trying to understand a personal relationship with God, and we're talking about God that created the universe, what does that, I mean, like what do those words, how do they pack out in your life? What does that look like? Not just those words, but what is that actually, how do you experience that? Or what does that look differently to you than not having a personal relationship with God?
well, yeah, I can imagine not having a relationship for me, but basically it's like knowing that someone is always on my side, someone is always available for me to talk to, and I literally talk to God. Sometimes just in my mind, sometimes I speak the words right out loud. Someone I go to with every need, with joy, with pain, and having that sense and literally feeling it in my body that this is a real being. It's not just some distant or some imaginary, something in my mind. I mean, I can feel my body changes, especially when I'm with other believers, like in church on Sunday morning when we're worshiping and just praising God. There is literally electricity just running through my veins and through my body.
So God on your everyday aspect of your life,
Mhm.
that is huge. That is huge. Do you have any connection with people that don't believe in Jesus, and how does that work?
I do can imagine what that looks like to them. I mean, I've talked to them, and I think from what from what they've told me, it's pretty, I don't want to say sad, but like empty. They oftentimes they seem to be looking for something, but have a hard time believing that a God who is so big or powerful or creative can also be willing to have we can care about a human who is here so little, and then we're gone. Also, people question if God is loving and good, how can we have how can he allow this evil in this world? So having conversation with people, and I don't try to change anybody's mind, just share with them my experience, and that's it, and encourage them to search and continue looking, and if they keep searching for what they believe there is, or if there is something more, they'll find it.
I can see that. That is true. I think I agree with that philosophy. There are too many people trying to force something down somebody. There's too many people not seeing people right where they're at and loving them, and as they seek that out for them to come to that reality on their own. In the idea of never being, I guess you mentioned about death and being sad and knowing that you were going to see somebody again.
Mhm.
Now we move like way forward. And if I was I the person that told you what happened with Mark, or did you hear from somebody else?
I heard it from Lisa.
Okay.
So I remember this, the day, the moment, when it happened, because we were celebrating my brother-in-law's birthday. So
Okay.
Angelo's birthday in March, and we were all out in the restaurant, which I usually don't answer my phone because we're with people, and I think she called me and I didn't answer the phone, and she might have called one more time, and I was like, well, if she's calling me again, something's happening. So I answered the phone, and she told me what happened, and I mean, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
And I knew your family. So when you shared that with them, that was probably just as daunting for them because we have been to your house for holidays and different
We
things like that.
We were just you were just at our house for Thanksgiving.
We did spend our last Thanksgiving with you. I do
Mhm.
have that picture. We were at the bottom of the stairwell getting ready
Yep,
to leave. And there's
yep,
another picture we took on the couch. I will have to post that when we share this story.
yep,
Wow. That was the last Thanksgiving. Wow.
yeah. Yeah, my whole family knows you, and everybody was in shock.
And so where do you go from there? What happens at this birthday celebration after that conversation? Oh my gosh, that changes things a little bit.
Then we got a hold of you, found out that, where you were and what the situation was, and we jumped in the car and we drove up to Dover.
Did you come that Okay, so hold on.
We came
The next
uh,
day.
the next day. Yeah,
Okay,
because
because
yeah, I think she called me, it was already pretty late in the evening.
okay, because Lisa was in Delaware with us there. And
Mhm.
then you came and picked up Mark's
Car.
vehicle and drove it back to Pennsylvania. When you
Yeah.
came, did I see you? Did I
No,
talk to you?
no, you weren't there.
How did you get the keys to the car? How did all that work out?
You left it with the hotel, the place that you were staying. You
Okay.
left all the information there. We had, once we got everything straightened out, they had everything. They had our names and
Okay.
all the info, the keys to us and everything else.
That's a long drive with that in your mind. What are you thinking the whole time like you're driving to get this car?
I was just thinking about you and the kids, like what, what is going on? How it's, I mean, of course, had questions, like how this happened, what happened, which we didn't really, too much
Mhm.
at, conversation with you, but just saying, what do we got to do? Praying, do a lot of praying and asking God for guidance, and we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna be there for each other, and
Mhm.
that was it.
Do you recall when we finally saw each other per se?
I think when we brought the car to your house,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
And at that time my brother probably was there.
I don't remember if your brother was there already. I don't
Okay.
remember your brother. I think someone was with you, but I don't remember if it
Okay.
was your brother. I just don't remember at this
Okay.
time.
And it was 6 years ago. Do you recall what I was like when we were talking or that part? And no matter how complicated it is, because this is an opportunity for people to kind of see from my friend's perspective of that grief process
Actually, I was surprised how well you were actually keeping it
functioning.
fun. And I knew that was out of necessity. At least that's what I believed.
Yes.
Um, I remember myself, like I said, when I lost my aunt, even though I was one of the youngest people in the home, I was able to function and make decisions, and it was out of necessity because other people couldn't. So, you had still two children and home and everything else you had to take care of, and then you will had to carve some time out for yourself. So yeah, I was really surprised, not surprised, because knowing you, you always have routines and everything else, plans, and you follow. So but at the same time, you were vulnerable, you were sharing. We talked about, how this whole event just ending up in Delaware, what it was about, how much you appreciated the fact that, you guys made time for each other. Um, so just hearing those stories, and then you sharing how Mark had everything planned and organized. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And at the same time, I was praising God that things were laid out, and there was some things that you at least didn't have to stress over.
You bring up a really good point. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, we need to do something in case something happens. And I'm like, we don't get out alive. I mean, there's no if
In
some
case.
right. There's no magic trick out of this. And it is perplexing to me. I don't know if we don't like the idea of talking about death, or we don't like the idea of our own mortality. But I do encourage people to plan um, for the inevitable. It does not, there are pre needs, there are so many different things you can do to make that concept bearable for the people that are going to be here when you're not here. Because it is so difficult to make those types of plans in someone's absence when your mind is just in a fog and it's just all over the place. It is miserable. It is miserable. And you're right, it is just the functioning part, because there are things that have to happen. But I think, like, after the service and everybody was gone, it was like my functionality can be minimum now. It does not have to be to that height of needing to get things done. Did you and I interact a lot after the service, or what do you recall from that?
You mean just right after the service that day, or after the service days and weeks going
Yeah,
forward?
days and week, either or, whichever you want to choose.
I think we interacted fairly, good amount, either in person or just via phone. You know, uh, not trying to bombard you with someone else to answer, but I still wanted to make sure that you were okay. You knew somebody was, everybody. There was a lot of people, I think, in your life that were there for you. And I think that's an amazing thing about, having friends and being close with people, because when the time of need comes, you don't have to be alone. But I remember you being able to just sit down and do nothing if that's what you wanted. You stopped attending to some parts of the house because it was a big house and you didn't have to do so many things because you were there alone for a while too, and changing the way, cooking was being done, because now you just had to do it for one person. So a lot of changes were coming. And I was amazed the way you were handling him. And I remember you sharing with me that you were, talking to a counselor, and that was one of the greatest things that you were able to do, for you and for your children, and for your friends, because that guidance was priceless.
That is a good point. I think the ability to realize, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what it's like to lose a husband. When
Mhm.
you're getting married, there's all these opportunities for premarital counseling or books about getting married. And I remember What to Expect When You're Expecting, the book about being pregnant. But there's
Mhm.
no, I mean, there are books about what to do when somebody passes, but it doesn't seem as readily available. It doesn't seem like it's somewhere where you can get that information, which caused me to lean into doing this podcast, because I remember how desperate I was for information. I was desperate to understand how to navigate this life in his absence. And what does that look like? Because everybody else's life continues to go on, and rightfully so. But the life that I had at that point was destroyed. I mean, it literally disintegrated, like, like, put kerosene on it. It went from having bonfires, a huge amount of people over, having great time, to, I mean, dealing with breast cancer, a massive hysterectomy. Alexander went into the military, Mark passed, and then Catherine went into the military. And I felt like I had the ambers of the life that I used to have in that big house, trying to figure out, what do I do now? I don't know what I would have done if I did not find a counselor and to try to figure that out. I have no idea what that would have looked like.
Yeah, I don't know what it would have looked like either, but I know that because you did have the counselor, I think you were able to not only navigate through for yourself, but also for others, because you connected with other people. I remember you sharing that, there were other people you were talking to, you were in a group, and I think those experiences as well helped. And I think when you lose someone suddenly, unexpectedly, that's when that shock is so big, because losing someone is difficult, whether it's because of illness, but at least if it is because something that it's taking time, you sort of have a way to prepare yourself slowly. Uh, when it's an accident or, unexpected like this, when it's tragic, then that shock is just too much to try to go through it by yourself or without help from someone who has experience already.
I would agree. I've had different conversations with people, and we talk about, is it easier to have had this from out of nowhere shock experience, or this building up to this person leaving? They both come with their own angst, um, and there are different ways in dealing with them. But yeah, there is something to be said to that versus going away for a lover's weekend and coming home alone. It is, the mind is just, I think an etch a sketch, like someone just shook my mind and shaking that and be like, and here you go, you get this back. And I'm like, what? I don't even understand.
Yeah.
I don't even understand. So now I've been in Pennsylvania for a while, and you're seeing me. How is it from the outside looking in at this person that you've known for these years, and watching that struggle? And how did that impact your faith at all? Or how was your faith part of helping you deal with that?
Yeah, my faith only strengthened because I saw you never waver your faith. And, Mark has always been strong in his faith and in your children as well. So for me, it was, I'm not gonna say, I don't want to say encouraging, but but it was encouraging to know that this is a real life situation. This is not just a test. This happened, and she is going through it. Her kids are going through it, and they did not lose their faith. They did not lose their faith. They know that they're living what they're believing, and it just encouraged me to say, yes, you are on the right path. And one day, and I never questioned it, but I know I'm gonna see Mark one day again, and it's going to be a fabulous reunion.
That is something to be said, because a lot of times we're in church or we're in Bible study, we're in a group thing at people's homes, and we're always talking about trials or tribulations. But when they come, when you first said that, I feel like that thing when, oh, this is not a test of the broadcast system, and that little line goes across and stuff like that, that is still true. That is
Yeah.
what life feels like. It's like this. I never looked at it in that perspective. Like, this is not a test. This is real life. This is where the term comes up. You put up or shut up. It's like either you're here for this or you're not. And
Right.
there are different times when we don't fare so well in our faith, and that is also part of learning and
Hmm.
encouraging. But there are times that we do hold the line, and it's like,
Hmm.
this is where either this is all I have or I have nothing at all in this process. Have there been times in your life where that has been, you feel like this is not a test, this is real life?
Yes, it has. More than one occasion. The biggest one was when my son was just an infant. So he was born in March, and early May, his grandfather, who lives in California, was visiting with us. So he wasn't even 2 months old yet. And it was a weekend, like a Friday. It started on a Friday, and he started getting weak and, not. I was nursing him. He didn't really want to eat much, and it was just getting weaker. So I called my doctor, and she said, well, it's the weather, it's spring, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I said, okay. Well, by Sunday night, His toes and his fingers were starting to turn blue. He was barely breathing.
Mm.
So Monday morning, where I'm rushing him to the doctor, to her. Well, we get there, they check his heart rate, and without even telling us what's going on, she sends us immediately to the children's hospital there. We get there, they put him in a room and don't even allow us to follow, and they have to shock him. His heart rate is at about 300 beats a minute. So his heart was exhausting itself, and had we not get him there in time, he would have been gone. His blood, was not reaching his extremities. So we found out that he was born with a tachycardia, which they did not catch at birth. It took about 4 different treatments of shock to try to get him stabilized, because they would shock him, he'd be fine for a little bit, goes right back to it. So here we are seeing our not even 2 months old son with all these people rushing, needles stuck in all his head, and IVs everywhere, and him screaming, and we can't go in there. So the only thing we could do, the only thing I knew what to do, we were on our knees praying and saying, God, I know you're real. I know you brought him here for a reason. We're believing that you're going to save him. And he did. Took few days. They finally got the medication right. He stayed in the hospital for about 10 days or so. He went home with a heart monitor, and they said that he would probably never grow out of this condition, but as he got older, that he would be able to know, like, if his heart went into tachycardia, and there is some things he can do to set his heart back to normal. Well, for me, that wasn't good enough, so I believed that God would heal him. I am a believer in miracles, and one of the things that when I gave my life to Christ, there was a group that I would join and pray, and I shared with them about my son, and they said, we're going to pray for him. I said, and we believe that God's going to heal him. And I said, I believe it too. So at about 8 months old, removed the monitor from him, went back to cardiologist. He said, he's fine. There's nothing wrong. I said, praise God. The boy's been healthy, never had another episode of any issues. And I mean, what he looks like now, what he's like now, like it never happened.
Wow. That that is amazing. That literally is the power of God showing up in our lives and doing miraculous things.
Yeah.
And that is so inspiring. What about times when you don't feel like God answered the prayer the way you wanted to, and still trusting God and knowing He's just as miraculous?
Yeah, I've had those. I've had those as well. Losing my dad, and even some things, wanting to be a pilot, and that didn't happen. And wanting to stay in Virginia, I had to go back. And I mean, there's situations, but uh, I know that I am only limited with what I can see. God knows the beginning, He knows the end,
Mm,
He knows what's better for me. And thankfully, at this point in my life, I've lived enough, I've seen enough to where I trust Him that if I don't get my prayers answered, it's because there is a better answer than what I'm looking for. There's a
amen.
there's a song that I heard long time ago when I used to work for this Jewish lady taking care of her kids, that some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. I think sometimes people look at God like a genie, like you rub it or do this and He's gonna make this happen. But if the genie rub doesn't happen, then God's not good. He is good all the time.
Amen.
Um, so
Amen.
I definitely can attest to that. So I lived in Pennsylvania, And now I'm moving to Virginia. I believe my last night in Pennsylvania was at your home. I think there was some white wine involved too that night before, if I recall correctly. I can't remember for sure. What did we do
Yeah.
that night? I don't recall or what that looked like.
Who else was there? Because I can't remember who, if it was.
When you say that, I think you had you surprised me and had like a whole little cookout. I come over there with my
Yeah,
little bag and I'm trying to go downstairs and
yeah,
you like come outside. I'm like, why? Yes, you did. I was not ready for that. Yeah, go. When did that planning start? How did that all happen? Yeah, let me hear the tea on that.
well, we're gonna be going, and we weren't gonna see each other as much, and there's so many other people who wanted to see you and say goodbye and wish you all the best. So I was pretty sure that you'd be willing to come over and hang out for a little bit. So just little trickery there, but I didn't mind. Nothing like when we tricked my Jay with venison.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so two stories. So thank you for bringing that up. So my late husband Mark was a hunter, and he hunted deer primarily. And I never tasted deer. It seemed kind of gross, the concept of it, until we started dating, went to his family's house, and then he made it, and it was like, okay, it's not so bad once you get the right butcher, because sometimes it can taste really gamey. But once he started, it just tastes like red meat per se. It didn't matter. And Jay was like, I can't stand venison. I'll never eat that. Da 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 da. And when people say stuff like that, that's sort of like a challenge. And I kind of take the challenges back to Monica saying, she was competitive. We kind of got that same thing vibe going on. And so I was like, okay, we're going to have you guys over for dinner. And I think it was some trickery with that because he said it was, no, we didn't say what it was. We just put it out.
It was stroganoff.
It was stroganoff. We didn't say beef stroganoff, but it was stroganoff. It was the meat and the gravy and the noodles. And Jay was eating and he was talking all this trash. I
Yeah.
can't stand deer meat, da 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 da. And did he have two or three helpings? How many was it?
I know he did for sure.
Two. I think he
Yeah.
was on the third, and we could not take it. And we started laughing, and he was like, "What's so funny?" I was like, "Well, that deer you eating." That was great.
It
That was
was.
great.
It
It
was.
was because Catherine and Alex were there. Were your kids there? Like we were all at the table. Everybody
Yes.
was fine except for Jay talking that trash, and he couldn't do it. Yeah, he ate that deer,
And
and
had
he swore he
seconds.
would never eat red meat at our house again. He was like, "I am never
Oh
having
yeah,
red meat."
he was mad at me.
He was probably steaming on the way home.
You know it.
Yeah, you guys, you did surprise me. I think I left work and then I came to your house because that was my last day of work. And then I was driving to Maryland halfway, and then I was going all the way to Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was a part of me that was excited, and there was a part of me like I just wanted to go in my room and cry, just go downstairs in the basement and cry and be like, I don't need this. I don't need this to be this real. I just kind of, part of me wanted to just get in the car and drive. I was like, I'm too tired. I don't have the bandwidth to do that at all. But I was like, and let me say, Monica can cook. See, your girl over here is more like a Blue Apron sort of kind of somebody cook for her. Monica out here, like making stuff from scratch. Like all I want to do is just unbutton my pants and come sit down and eat at Monica's house because it is some yumminess that's happening. And then she'll go, oh, and I just did this and I just did it. And then there's 13 things on the table that were all made from scratch. And I just want a fork. I'm not even like, I'm on team wash dishes over here or team paper plates. I am not on the cooking team, but I am on the eating team. So I was like, well, Monica did throw a party. I'm going to eat. So let me go on and get up here. So
Yeah.
were you home when I left or when I headed to Virginia? How was that for you? What did that look like?
I mean, I was excited for you because I knew you were gonna be, with family and friend. It's important to have friends, but your siblings were closer, and
Mhm.
your job we were, trying to get a job, and God opened another door. So I was happy for you. I was excited, and I knew we'd make, the distance is not that far.
Hmm.
Technology today, we can see each other more than, than when I was in Poland and my mother was here.
Right? Twice a
Months
year?
for a letter to come. So, um, I had a place to go visit again, so I was excited. I was happy. Not
Oh,
that you were gonna be away, but there was these new things that, new things are often nice.
that's
We look,
true.
so I thought you were gonna be excited as well, and it would help you move toward your next point in life.
Thank you. Okay, Monica. I guess that when you lived in Poland, everything else is just subpar as far as how that's going to be, as far as difficulties. That must change your perspective of so many things that people
Mhm.
see, and when you compare it to that and to this. And if I recall, so one of the things that I do is have like a girlfriend's breakfast,
Okay.
and you and Lisa came for that. How
Mhm.
was that to be like from what we were there to be here at my place and friends and family and see that different perspective? Now, some of those friends you had seen at the bonfire, they had come up, but to sort of be here now in this new life that I'm living, what was that like?
It was super exciting. It's just, for one, having all women. Bonfire was family, so, and not taking anything away from that, because it was great. We're doing karaoke and kids just running everywhere, and watching the kids grow up from, little to teenagers. All those things are great, and just connecting. But there is something great about women just being together and
Mhm.
sharing and caring for each other. So, and meeting so many of them that I haven't met yet. It was just so much fun. The activities we did, the food we had, and just it was great. I look forward to it every time.
So we kind of took the bonfire to a different level, kind of flipped it a little bit and made it something else. I know you are tired. This has been a long day for you. I appreciate you having this conversation. I do have two questions, two more things
Mhm.
for you. If someone comes to you and they tell you that their friend lost a spouse, what would you say to them?
Someone I know,
Yeah,
someone
like a
I know.
coworker comes in and goes, "Hey, Monica," and you're talking about your weekend, and they go, "Oh, my best friend's husband passed, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think I'm just gonna give her space. I'm not gonna talk to her for a while and just let her deal with it."
No, definitely not. Don't do that. Be there for them. Reach out to them. Encourage them to, find someone, a counselor, the talks, podcast. Definitely don't let them be alone, because even though I think people think they want to be alone, alone is a bad place to be when you just went through such a difficult loss. I feel that that is the devil's way to try to keep someone hurting and not being able to figure out how to move forward because they're isolated. So, yes, give them space if they need space, but continue to reach out, continue to check in on them, provide for them, and even be there. Just if they want to cry, then just be quiet and let them cry. Just offer a hug, do something.
Those are good words. The power of silence and being there is is beyond comprehension because most likely you don't know what to say to that person really. And we often fumble with words when we don't know what to say because we feel like we have to put something in the air. When we're just in that space with them and willing to be quiet because they probably are afraid to try to articulate how they really feel and what they're doing. But the value of having someone there with them is extremely important. I'll sneak back. I have two more. What
Mhm.
gives Monica hope right now? What do you have hope for in life?
Looking forward to retirement.
Now, how old are you? You keep talking about retirement. How old are you, Monica? If you mind sharing, if you don't want to, you can just tell how many years till
Uh,
retirement.
yeah, gonna be 52 in a couple of months.
Looking good, looking good.
Thank you. But I've worked since I was like 4 years old, so I feel like it's been a long time.
Right.
Actually, I'm looking forward to my kids starting their families and
Oh,
hopefully have grandkids coming around soon. As a matter of fact, my son's best friend just had a baby 2 weeks ago, and I call him my son too, and he calls me mom. So this is actually my grandbaby because he lost both of his parents right around COVID, one to COVID and his mom a year later. So, and he's doing great considering what he's went through. But since he doesn't have mom there, and so I'm excited about that, and I'm hoping that my son, who's recently moved back to the area after being away for 7 years, is I get to see him, and hopefully he's gonna thinking about maybe settling his roots somewhere close and you know working on family. And Olivia plans on coming back to Philly area maybe by the end of the year. So
wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
I
Okay, cool. Monica, thank you for this conversation. Any closing words, anything, words of advice or something you want to say before we wrap up?
I don't know, you kind of think I've said a lot of it already before during our podcast, but when you're going through something difficult, don't do it alone. There's people who love you, who care about you, whether you know it or not. And if you allow them, if you just share your vulnerability, it's going to help you so much better, so much more.
Thank you. Thank you for those words of advice.
You're
Monica,
welcome.
you have a good evening. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye
Take care.
bye. I just wrapped up a conversation with my girlfriend, Monica. She is so chilled. Life in Poland was no joke, and that lady is strong. Her quiet and low key demeanor is so comforting. Monica is so strong, and I am grateful that she is part of my hood. I'm grateful to wrap up this series of my journey with her, considering that my last night sleeping in Pennsylvania was at her home. I thank you for being on this journey with me. I am sorry for the loved one that is no longer here that you have lost, that has driven you to this conversation. But I am glad that you are part of my hood. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.